So we're piggybacking on the last week, trying to link back up with the Four Noble Truths. And last week we clarified a few terms when Buddha says life is suffering. Really, what he was talking about was uh, well, first of all, I delineated the cut the suffering into two different packs, more or less. There's two kinds of suffering. There's necessary suffering, which every human being legitimately will come into contact with. Um, and there's really five areas of legitimate suffering. Now, some other people have six, some have four, but the Buddha talked about five, that every human being is going to run into these things. Birthing, which we already have all run into. Then there's illness. Then there's the suffering of injury, both physical, psychological, spiritual. Then there's aging, which we're all doing pretty well here, and then dying. So those are the five necessary sufferings. And the real to remind you of the meaning of suffering itself in English means to bear the pain of a situation. So it's bearing the pain. Uh, and then the Buddha wasn't really dealing with that. He wants to talk about unnecessary suffering and what you could do about it. You bear the pain. There's nothing you can do about it. You're being born, and at some point we'll be dying. Okay, uh, those things are all human beings have to face and have to learn how to bear the pain of. But the unnecessary suffering, which the Sanskrit word was dukkha, he's really talking about life as dukkha, that we run into dukkha. Dukkha means a sense of dis-ease. In our culture, in this time, the closest to transformation translation of dukkha would be anxiety, because like most of us here, there's no wild animal that's going to get at us. There's no bomb coming through the roof. Hopefully, people are living in those kind of situations. I can't imagine trying to go to bed at night and sleep in Gaza, for instance, or Ukraine, or Russia, or Somalia, all these places that have active conflicts. But for most part, we're not in fear of a rhinoceros coming through the door. Anxiety is fearing the fact that a rhinoceros might come through the door. It's different. It's a mental thing, and the Buddha said that you can deal with. He says, and so his Four Noble Truths was really, again, the way I see it anyway, is a medical model. The symptom, I'm just ill at ease with light. Sometimes, it can go anywhere from a low refrigerator hum to full-blown panic attack, where your body, as you freeze up, you go numb. That's sort of the that's sort of the anxiety spectrum there. But there's always, in human life, there's usually always a low refrigerator hum of just things just aren't quite right, dis-ease. So he does a medical model of the symptom, which is what we just talked about. Then he gives a diagnosis, and then he does testing in the third noble truth to figure out what's really there. Same way you don't often know, and then they'll take an X-ray and they'll see something, or they'll take an MRI or a CAT scan, CT scan. So he does that, and the testing that he talks about is mindfulness, really looking beneath the surface of the moment. Okay, and then finally, the fourth noble truth is the treatment. It's like where they write you a prescription, or et cetera, and maybe you get some medicine or whatever. Um, and that's, but if you don't take the medicine, or if you don't go do the therapy at the place you're trying to fix a broken shoulder or something, if you don't go in and do the therapy, it doesn't make any difference they have it. Those are the people who read a lot about Buddhism but never actually do the treatments. Doesn't change you much. It's all up in the head, see. So we're sort of working on building on that, and we were talking about, what the Buddha said you can really work with is the dis-ease of being in this human realm, and it gets tricky, but he gives us a path. Okay, he gives us a path. I just want to put the screensaver up just for a minute for the people who came in late, if I can here. Wait a minute. Technology is wonderful. See? Yeah, there we go. This is what I had up in the beginning, just to give you a brief look. And the people who are watching this online later, maybe. This was a screensaver, and it's really what's behind me here. And these guys are behind me. That's on the right side is or left. I don't know how it works on the screen, but there's a medicine Buddha who is in blue. I'm wearing the medicine, the mala beads that are blue because that's about healing. That's about healing. And so there's many Buddhas, but the blue one is about healing. And and he's a neurologist. I like to say Buddha was my favorite, is my favorite Indian neurologist. He understands the mind and what the, how the mind actually works for us and against us. Okay, he's trying to heal how it works against us. On the other side is a picture of Jesus hanging on the cross. Now, by a sister of Loretto, Sister Jeannie Duber. Uh, what these pictures both hold together is both of these men, they were focusing on suffering and how you deal with it. And you may have another practice or another religion, but if it doesn't deal with what to do with suffering, you got some kind of new age thing that it won't go too far. But these guys, and I have a little sign beneath them that says "not true." These are really my true basic lineages. These are my guys, and I go back and forth between them because though their teaching is very different, Buddha was a scientist, Jesus was a poet. They use very different ways to talk about it. What we're working is on the Buddhist side of the street, where he breaks everything down into, water he would call H2O, and Jesus would call it river. He'd use a poetic metaphor. But they're both trying to help us deal with suffering, learning how to bear the necessary suffering of being a human, not freaking out, but then more importantly, how to heal the unnecessary suffering caused by that beautiful thing we have in our head called the left brain. Does wonderful things. We're talking, somebody with a left brain invented Zoom, many people probably, which brings us together. But the left brain and the thinking mechanism can keep us apart or break down relationships. So anyway, I wanted to show you that picture. And then down below is a little picture of the drum there, which is a Sufi drum. And those really are my third teachers, the poets. And the Sufis that I love are Rumi, Hafiz, those guys. Yeah. So these are sort of the guys that I lean on. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so we can just get on with it here. Stop that share. Well, you online folks, I wanted you to be able to see that. Or if you came in late, I apologize if you were here last Friday, because if you came in like 1 or 2 minutes after, you probably missed 7 minutes of a great talk by by Debbie Mahoney last week on saying yes to fear. You can always go back and see it on YouTube. Thankfully, Jill caught it. I lost the internet at that time, and so that's how that worked out. Well, I want to start. I've got two poems for you today, and we're going to look at a karma, another term it's sort of made its way. Good karma garage, and karma's a bitch, and we have, but American understanding of this kind of stuff doesn't go too deep, and so I really want to explore karmic and karmic formation. Last week we talked about sort of the foundation of disease, of anxiety, which is ignorance. And that just means ignoring things that are sort of painful. We look the other way. The opposite of ignorance, by the way, and the antidote is what they call in Buddhism mindfulness. Mindfulness means very calming down and just taking a deep look at it. It's the opposite of ignorance. Ignorance is the foundation of this kind of anxiety. People go to a therapist to work with anxiety, and that's brilliant and courageous because you have somebody else who's there with you to reflect things that you might not want to see, and also it's a chance for you to talk about things that are painful. That takes a lot of courage to do. I have great respect for therapists. Thomas Keating, my teacher of centering prayer, He said, when you're sitting in this kind of wordless prayer communion state called meditation, he says, then you're with the divine therapist. I always like that thought. He says he's always in and his rates are really cheap. So this is a Tibetan poem, which many of you know. It was a poem written by Khenpo Rinpoche, who was Sogyal Rinpoche, his teacher. And we're going to hear it recited by a Sogyal Rinpoche to start our meditation period. But I want to read the words for you. And they include the words karma and samsara. These are the only two words that might be unfamiliar to you. These are, some people really love this poem. I do too. It's called Rest in Natural Great Peace. Rest in natural great peace. This exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace. Rest in natural great peace. Send that out to this couple that's struggling, because when things fall apart, one of the more painful things is when a relationship falls apart. And I'm to send this natural great peace, which is in them both. It's in all of us, but it takes somebody to remind us of that. So let's listen to it again. Rest in natural great peace. You can rest because it's already in you. You just have to find your way through it. And when the mind is going, like nonstop, uh, trying to figure out and duct tape the problem together, believe me, I've lived that. Uh, it, it's not peaceful. You have no access to really the ace in the hole, which is what's at your very center. Who you really are is not confused. It's clear, you see. Um, Rest in natural great peace. This exhausted mind, your mind might be exhausted right now. It's beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts. Who doesn't know that moment? Like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. We're going to actually look into samsara a little bit next week. Samsara is this whole mechanism of unnecessary suffering, and it is a mechanism. And Buddha is like he's he's like a systems analyst, and it will show us the 12 links, kind of circular chain that's samsara. And if you've ever been suffering mental kind of torture, it goes like this, doesn't it? It goes like this, the same thoughts coming back. Okay, it's like a tape loop. And so he'll show us the 12. Um, we're not going to go into all 12 of them, but they're links in a chain that go around and you know about a chain. When you break one link, you break the whole thing. And so we talked about ignorance last week. Ignorance is one of the primary, is one, the first link that often talked about. And the next is what they call karmic formation. What's karma all about? Okay. How does that form? Okay. So I want to talk, I've got a poem that I worked on this week about karma. Karma literally means in Sanskrit doing, what you do. And we do thinking, don't we? It doesn't mean just something out there. We do thinking. This thing actually, does it ever stop? Maybe in deep sleep, but we do thinking, we do talking, and we do things in the world. We move things. We punch people's in the nose. We do all kinds of crazy things, or good things. In either case, the thoughts, words, and deeds ripple out into the world, and those ripples come back. If you ever watch throwing a stone out, the ripples come back to shore. The chickens come home to roost. There's an element in that, but so we all know that. But the question is, what is karma exactly? How does it working to cause anxiety, everything from anxiety to panic? Well, this is the poem, and this poem will be on the Monday morning musing, so you'll have a copy of it. But it's the best I could do to put it in a few words. Karma is a conditioned mental map. Okay, it's a conditioned mental map it's a neurological GPS. We all love GPSs, especially when we're in a foreign country, we don't know where we are. For me, it's going to Louisville, going to the east side of Louisville. I got to put in and the karma is a kind of neurological GPS that has, unfortunately, four major glitches in it. And the four major glitches, according to the Buddha, are a kind of attachment to beliefs. That's right up front. We've been working with that concept. We'll double back on it, but attachment to beliefs, attachment to rituals, attachments to comfort, and lastly, attachment to the what the Buddhists call the I illusion, the idea that I exist separately from all this. I'm looking at Elizabeth sitting in the lazy boy there, and what the mind tells you is I'm here and she's there, you know. But when you get to the bottom of Buddhism or even ecology, you realize everything's connected to everything else. And if anything, there's two subjects here. There's not a subject and object. There's not like 30 of you in the squares is the object of this talk. No, when you talk heart to heart, there's a connection. We're all in it together. So just run, and it's not so much attachments would be a kinder word to say than addiction, because when you're really addicted to any of these four things, which means you got to have them, well, then you're in real trouble. Okay, attachment to beliefs. We've been talking about the difference between belief and faith. You can see it in the hands. Belief is you hold on to something for dear life, and you're not going. Wars are waged on belief, holy wars. And then actually all wars are holy or they're unholy wars because there's a belief that is causing guys to kill other people and do whatever. Okay, and then faith is more like the open hand. Don't confuse the two. We've worked on that. So beliefs, an attachment to beliefs are the thing. That's my first Zen master, Suzuki Roshi, said it's absolutely critical to believe in nothing. Well, I didn't know what to do with that at 22 when I started with him. I said, don't I believe in meditation? Don't I believe in Buddhism now? Which was all new to me. No, he meant you don't hold anything so tight. You try holding your fist like this for the rest of the talk, and you understand what belief does to a human body. And you can believe that life's a bitch and then you die. You can believe you can believe and then add the beer commercial, life's a bitch and then you die. So grab for all the gusto you can. Now, if you believe that, that's a certain look at the world and your place in it. The world's a mean, ugly place, and you gotta just take care of number one because nobody else listens. Those are all beliefs. You don't have to. We're not talking about theology necessary or religion, but that does become your religion. Whoever dies with the most toys wins. That's a belief in a consumer society. And we all have them and you encounter them. But the question is, you know, uh, to hold them lightly, if at all. There's a difference between holding plans lightly and then sticking to the plan no matter what. You see. So it's a question of degree here. Attachment to rituals. Uh, I noticed I always start shaving on this side of my face. Well, that's not, huge, that's not huge, but that is it. And then I'll go to this side, then I'll do this, and I'll do this. Or the way I take my pills in the morning, where I arrange my pills. And I've noticed those rituals, but I hold them lightly. And, tying your shoes is a ritual if you think about it, because we're talking about overall in karma, it's a kind of habit energy. Okay. But when you get in a fight with your wife over there's a right way and a wrong way to load the fucking dishwasher. I've been in that fight. And I don't fight that fight anymore. When I'm told that I loaded it wrong, I say, you're right, Jerry. I'm just not going to play that game. And we all do that. There's a right way to do this. And I'm a one on the Enneagram. There's a right way to do everything. I've had to work with that for years. Now, attachment to comfort is really, it builds, in our culture, we are a comfortable culture. Think of any other culture. And yet we're still uneasy. And attachment to comfort means You're always tweaking, it's like a thermostatic mentality where you're always trying to keep it at 71 degrees or something. And so, you're always tweaking the moment. But attachment to comfort it's also brainstem kind of consciousness. Go towards comfort, go away from pain. Go away if it's painful. Towards the comfortable, away from the discomfortable. And if you have a relationship, you can go on the rocks just for that because you avoid the uncomfortable conversations. That's why you have a therapist, because he or she asks you uncomfortable questions. But then the Buddha was a great Indian neurologist slash therapist. But finally, it all boils down to this is really the nut. All these other things form up this attachment to the sort of what the Buddhists would say is an illusion that I am a separate self and everything else out there is to be either manipulated or objects or to be afraid of or whatever. Now, I'm here talking to you there. When I first heard this, I said, I was listening to a tape in the car, and when I heard Thich Nhat Hanh talking about it, I said, well, who the fuck's driving this car? Well, of course, I was. But also the steering wheel was in my hand and the traffic was out there. And, when you forget all the other things that are connected to you, you can get an accident. Yeah, so this is trickier, this eye illusion. We're going to work with that. But at first, the ego doesn't like to even think about that. Well, of course I'm here. What the hell are you talking about? But we'll work with all these things. But these all combine. The Buddhist is great. The Buddha is great about he looked into all this with no formal teaching. He was just watching his mind, and he noticed what he. And then the final illusion to surrender to is this illusion that I exist separate from everything else. And it's sort of scary, but we all have it. Uh, uh, and then when you really get caught in this kind of habit energy, what we see what we believe, and we believe what we see. People all say, I don't understand how whether it's you're talking about MAGA people as if they exist separate from you, a special group. That's how we get into any kind of racist thinking. MAGA people, black people, liberals, uh, and but people say, well, how can they look at so and so and think he's a leader or something? Well, we see what we believe, and that's where the beliefs color what you see. They're glasses, they're like spectacles, and if you have rose-colored glasses, it looks rosy, and if you have dark glasses, it looks dark, and so these beliefs become uh, things that alter your perception of the world and what we believe we see. Now, karma, that's the way karma shades. Uh, each moment's pressurizing with a kind of stale habit energy. See, you get five people who witness an accident, and you'll get five different accounts. And if you're going through the world thinking life's a bitch, and then you die, and there's a lot of dangerous people, well, you might not leave your house, and people don't. Uh, True, there are dangerous people. Yeah, true things, bad, awful things happen, but to think it's all that way or it's all just perfect. These are beliefs, and that's a kind of stale habit energy. You don't really see the wonder. Hades taught me that going to Haiti, where it's objectively grim and uh, just a kind of hellscape in a way, most places, but then there's great joy there too. And if you only see one, you don't see the other. You're not seeing reality. So karma is a kind of stale habit energy. It's another way of thinking about it. We all have it. Marriages can get stale. You could just have a sort of stale, not fresh. And Buddhism and really physics says the same thing. Every moment is arising. It's unique. Every moment. And the fact that it seems like same old shit, different day, karma's got you. When you have that feeling, you have a hard time getting up, same old shit, different day. That's karma working, and it's all interlocking, but it happens in the mind, and the Buddha's going to tell us a lot about that. And ultimately, karma blinds us to something else, to the inherent beauty, truth, and goodness of our own self at the very core. And I don't care how miserable you are, how creepy you are, how bad you are, how good you are. It's all beyond that. The very center, from the Buddhist view, from Jesus's view, from any mystic view in any true contemplative tradition, at the very core of human beings is the sacred, is the divine. They call it the Buddha nature, they call it the Tao, they call it love, call it the Holy Spirit. We throw names at it, but they're all pointing to the same thing. And when your vision is when you're locked into stale habit energy, the big thing it blinds us to is that we have this inherent sacred nature at the very center. And some of you people listeners don't believe that. I understand that. It's not a fault of yours. It is a fault of it is karma at work, you see. Now, meditation is the practice of laying thinking aside because thinking is integral to karma. And so it's a kind of artificial thing where you say, okay, for 20 minutes, we're going to lay thinking aside, not thoughts, because your mind keeps, unless you're flatlined, your mind keeps producing thoughts and then sentences and then scenarios. Okay. No, that keeps happening, but we lay aside the thinking of it. We lay aside of being caught by it. Okay. We lay thinking aside for a while, 20 minutes, and just rest in what? Well, the Buddhists would call it just pure awareness. For 20 minutes, we're making awareness the master and thinking the servant. You don't have to go to India to meet the master. The master's at the very center. And if you can lay thinking aside, Evagrius Ponticus was a fourth century desert father, and he said that was uh, the essence of prayer, laying thinking aside. So when we do that, we consent to at least intend to go into a kind of wordless, co-abiding communion with something we can't see. And that's no small thing. That's why most people think, well, what is this meditation? Well, it's really that. That's the same as prayer. They're the same at that because when you get into wordless co-abiding, you're here abiding with that formless um, presence in yourself. Some people just call it the presence. Well, then you're dropping into awareness. Maybe it only lasts for a millisecond, and then all of a sudden you're thinking again about, it, especially when you're in a jam, when things suffering is great. We just try to we just go round and round trying to solve it. But at some point you realize, especially relationships that when they go wrong or right has nothing to do. It has to do with the heart. So this is heart to heart. The heart is the dwelling place of the sacred in whatever tradition you're talking about. And so we're dropping the body and mind into the heart, and we're just resting there. We're resting there. I'll put up the picture of that we use sometimes, and then we'll listen to Sargal Rinpoche recite the. If I can get it up here, see if this works for me this time. Yeah, and we'll hear Sargal Rinpoche recite the rest in natural great peace. Okay, so I think that's good enough for the. By the way, if you're listening on YouTube, you can find this recitation of the rest in natural great peace. At least you can find it on Spotify, and if not there, you can find it on SoundCloud. Okay, I think that's good enough for the teaching for the tape.